Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban kum. Host Galdeners and all to all Radio Dawn listeners and Creamy Institute viewers and listeners. We've got another amazing session lined up for you today. But before we move on to our guest for today and our topic, I just want to say that if you can please like, subscribe and share on Creamy Institute social media. That's Facebook, YouTube and Instagram, and also the same with Radio Dawn. So you can be updated every time we have a new program for you guys out there. So today we've got a special guest. As you know, over the last month or so, we've been having some international guests joining us on our live interviews. Absolutely amazing personalities, absolutely fantastic, and we loved sharing their work, their projects that they're doing, and what they're up to at the moment, and the future projects. And we've got another international guest live on today's session for yourselves. Now, before we move on to the guest, I just want to say her name is Sister Mehded Maryam Sinclair. She's an author, teacher, performing artist, and student living in Istanbul, where she studies, researches, and teaches the lives of the prophets, mashallah, from the Quran to families all over the globe. She is the author of 2 award-winning books, 5 audiobooks, and she has narrated classical Quranic stories to thousands of live listeners across the globe. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome live all the way from Istanbul, Sister Maryam. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'm impressed with your Turkish. Hoş bulduk.
Eyvallah. You know what it is? It's strange because over the last month or so, we've had a few people from Turkey, especially Istanbul. Now, the thing is, I don't know if you know what's happening here in the UK, but everyone loves the Ertuğrul and the Osman series that's being played in Turkey at the moment. Obviously, we have the translate. It's live today, but we have to wait for the translation, which is done overnight, and then it'll be played here in the UK tomorrow. So we're all looking forward to the next episode of Osman, which is played tomorrow. So we always pick up a few terms here and there. We may not know what they mean, but hey, they sound good.
Yeah, good.
And it attaches us to our history as well. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've made a plan that I'm going to learn some Turkish, at least have a basic conversation. Inshallah. So in the future, we'll have interviews in Turkish, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So, mashallah, thank you very much once again for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting today's session, and it's an honor. Now, Sister Maryam, obviously, with your accent, people might be thinking, well, she's not from UK, so where is she from? So, if you don't mind, if you could just give us a bit of background, where you're from and how come you're living in Istanbul, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, I'm American. I grew up in Cleveland, and then I lived in Vermont for about 25 years or so. And then 30 years ago, I wanted to make a deeper commitment to Islam. And I didn't really know anybody except a few people in Istanbul. And so I came to Istanbul for that purpose. And alhamdulillah, I came, I think I had maybe a 6-month ticket. And then I felt so happy about the changes that I felt in myself. And I also felt that if I left and went back, I would lose what I had gained. And so I tore up my ticket and stayed for about 10 years. During that time, my younger son, Ibrahim, came also after he graduated high school. And he began studying with an Islamic crafts expert, because that was something he had loved all his life, not the Islamic part of it, but the crafts. And so, at the time that I came to Turkey, I had already been reading the English translation of the Quran and learning to fast and to pray the Salat. But I didn't actually become a Muslim until after I came here, because I had a whole package of orthodoxy fears from when I had grown up as a Catholic. So I had to work some of those things out before I could understand that there is a possibility that, of course, one of the religions is true. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, so I stayed here. I was here for 10 years, as I said. And then we both moved to Jordan, where I was in Amman for 20 years. And now I've been back for 2 back here.
Fantastic. So you say you've been at Oman for 20 years?
Yes.
Wow, mashallah. I was there in 2003. I stayed in Hayy al-Harabsha.
Yes.
I was with Sheikh Nu for a few months there. I was studying at the Qasid Institute. A beautiful country, Jordan, mashallah.
Yeah. And how's your Arabic?
That was then.
I see.
No, I can hold a basic conversation, but that's probably about it. It's a shame, really, because we go out, we spend all that time and effort to go and study, and then when we come back, the world just takes over. Our worldly life just takes over. We end up doing other things.
Yeah.
I was supposed to do a full year course, but I went for about 3 months. Came back because my mother wanted to go Hajj that year, so we went to Hajj, and then straight after, mashallah, and then straight after we got married. I got married. And I never went back, so which is a bit of a shame, but it's one of those things, I guess.
Inshallah, it will come later.
You can plan, but Allah's the best of planners, like
yes, indeed, yeah. So while we were in Jordan, my son married, and they have 5 children, and they're actually living in so I have actually 7 grandchildren.
Wow, mashallah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look that old, so I don't know how you did it, but mashallah.
I don't know, I didn't either.
Yeah, you'll have to give us your secrets on how you stay so young then, mashallah.
I eat a lot of vegetables.
Inshallah.
Stay away from the doctor's offices.
Alhamdulillah. Now, I mean, obviously, in terms of Turkey, I think, every time we have someone from Turkey, it means a lot because there's a lot of Islamic history in Turkey. And unfortunately, we didn't really pay too much attention to it here until we start watching it more on TV.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because over the last 2 years in COVID, obviously everyone's been, stuck indoors and isolated. As soon as the restrictions have been eased here in the UK, every time I'm trying to get saying, well, we're in Turkey at the moment. Everyone's going to holiday in Turkey. So
it's just the expat numbers here are just ballooning. Really, I mean, it's so extreme that the section of Istanbul, which is called Fatih, has made it illegal for foreigners to rent apartments in Fatih.
Wow,
that's how bad it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've been a couple of times and it's been absolutely. We actually went on the week where we went. They had the opening of the Hagia Sophia. As a masjid. It's absolutely. We didn't expect it, and then we were told at that time that on Jummah, Hagia Sophia will open. Is absolutely amazing. The atmosphere in. So yeah, alhamdulillah, we were literally like 2 minutes. You could see the Hagia Sophia from our hotel. So it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate to be here. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. So, in terms of, mashallah, you're an author. That's absolutely amazing. And one of the books that you've got here is Wings, When Wings Expand. And that's a title that we've heard everywhere in the UK. So it seems to be a very popular, even till today, alhamdulillah, it's a very popular title. And something that I did, that caught my eyes quite a few years back. But hey, I've got the author live today. It's absolutely amazing.
Did you read it then?
We're looking about, I think it was about 10 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah, at the time, yeah, absolutely amazing. Because my kids were growing up at the time and I used to read bedtime stories. And all we used to do at the time was roll doll stories. So the fact that we had an alternative at the time, because there wasn't many around at the time, to tell you the truth. And the fact that we had something like that, it was an amazing source of inspiration. So Jazakumullah khairan for, hitting the market when we really needed something like that. So we really appreciate that. And that's what we want to go into more today, because you're an author and you've done audiobooks, and mashallah, you sent me samples in terms of recordings of what you've done, and it sounded absolutely amazing. I think it's something about the American accent that we really like over here in the UK. I think having to listen to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf for so many years, I think anything that comes from America, I think it attracts us straight away. So
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So if you don't mind, if you could just tell us more about in terms of how you got into becoming an author? I think that's something that's especially here, because we're moving back into like poetry, and there's a lot of authors that are coming out now, especially amongst the converts, especially because they come from the English background. Their literacy is really high as well, so it's absolutely fantastic that they're bringing that over into the Islamic market. So the fact that you beat them to it, so it's great to see what made you go into authorship, and especially Islamic books. If you could just tell us about that.
Let's see. Well, I started out, I think that I always had a love for writing and for language. I remember being in high school, and my favorite teacher was my English teacher, which was my writing teacher. And the thing that I remember about her is that she used to have a little stuffed parakeet that she would wear on her shoulder to school. And then you would walk down the hall and say hello to her, and then she would turn to her little, her little bird and say hello. So I think that had an impact on me. Not that particular, not the bird, but just the personality, that she had. So actually, when I went into university, I went in to study. I studied 4 years of German when I was in high school, and then when I went into university, I wanted to keep studying German, but I was also really interested in elementary education. And I think during the time that I was training and doing my student teaching in elementary education and doing my first job, I became aware of how much children long for stories and literature. So that became really clear to me very early on.
So, Masha, so in terms of the first book that you wrote, was it Wings Expand, or was it Miraculous Happenings?
No, it was Miraculous Happenings. Yeah. But before then, when I had my own children, that's when I really began to recognize this thing about stories. And I would notice how they would spend hours playing a story, a story that they had heard, a story that I had told them, and then they'd spend hours acting it out, doing it again and again and again and again. And so it became, that storytelling became really important to me. And even though I took my master's degree in organizational and human resources development and counseling, and I was working on an adolescent alcohol and drug abuse treatment center as a therapist, an adolescent unit. And I just felt like I could see that the children that were in the most trouble were children that didn't have any support in developing an imaginary life, in developing a story life. And that's when I began to want to be a storyteller. And so I began visiting elementary schools and telling stories and then teaching storytelling. And that led me actually over a space of, maybe 7 or 8 years, it led me to the classical literature of the world. And it led me to a fellowship to develop a telling of Homer's Odyssey as part of a literacy program that the state of Vermont was going to be doing. And that working with that material is what really made me long to memorize the Quran. At the same time of all that, I was reading the English translation of the Quran, but I began to, because I had experience of memorizing some of this text, and I had the possibility of seeing what that did to me, and it made me really made me understand why people long to memorize the Quran and why they do. And that was really what took me to Turkey, was that I wanted to be able to be in a place where I would be able to memorize the Quran. And what actually happened was that I was in a place where I was able to learn the letters. I was, in the diacritical marks, and I was able to study tajweed. but I'm only beginning to, I mean, I've done a fair amount of memorizing, but I haven't really embarked on the project of memorizing the Quran. But I really want to do that. That's in my du'as every day,
No,
because I
alhamdulillah.
still, yeah, that's the
So,
jewel. That's the jewel of life, and it's
yeah, yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's great that you mentioned the Quran, because it seems to be a neglected text. So whenever we talk about authorship or something, we'll talk about other things, but we'll forget about especially today's topic, which is about storytelling for the sake of Allah. We'll talk about storybooks, but we'll forget the greatest storybook of all, in a way. It's the Quran, which tells us about the stories of the prophets and about our history. And at the
exactly.
end of the day, they do say, there's a saying that if you don't know where you came from, how do you know where you're going?
Yeah,
It says
exactly.
it's very
Yeah,
important that we learn our tradition from the source itself. But
yeah.
in terms of storytelling, because obviously that's the main topic of today. Now, a lot of people, they'll leave their children to play. They'll feel that, playing or going out to the park or something, that's the key thing. And when they come home, they get exhausted, they can go to sleep, and that's what it's all about, is playing when you're a child. How important do you think telling children stories is at an young age, and when do you think they should start?
This is something that should start before the child is born. We need to recognize that that child in the womb is listening, and that actually it's known that if a child has has some disorder and does not listen, does not hear, that child will not learn to speak. If he doesn't hear in the womb, then he will be born not being able to speak without, now there's long extensive therapies that have been developed, but before that, no, there wasn't. So the child is there listening. And I read about an African people who, when a mother discovered she was carrying a child within her, she would find a melody that would be that child's melody, and she would sing it all the time, singing it, with the intention of singing it to the child. And she would, when the child was born, she would sing it, and all the time the child was growing up, she would sing it to the child, many times. And if she were still around when that child was an adult and was dying, she would sing it even then. That was his melody. And I just thought that was a really beautiful thing. And it's, I think that Muslim parents understand that. Many Muslim parents understand that, because there are so many Muslim parents who, from the time the baby is in the house, in the crib, or even there are lots of Muslim mothers who recognize this, who recite Quran intentionally because there's a child in their womb, or have a recording playing or whatever, and who understand that just having that presence in the child's life will make a difference in them and who they are. And then just in terms of telling a child a story even before you think they understand. Like, for instance, sometimes people have a tendency to think, well, the baby doesn't understand, so it doesn't matter. Just like a sack of potatoes, I'll put them here and I'll put them there and I'll do this and I'll do that. But in fact, that's so wrong. I mean, if you tell the child you're going to change the nappy, and if you tell the child after this you're going to go sit with your baba, and if you're after this, and this is and it's raining, can you hear the rain? All those kinds of things make a huge difference in that child's integrity and that child's ability to learn language later. All of it matters, even though they have no idea what you're talking about, apparently. But there's so many different ways to understand, and so many different levels of understanding we cannot fathom. So telling stories doesn't always, it doesn't mean, you can take your child for a walk with a stroller and see a cat jump out of a tree. Then you can come back home again and you can say, we saw this big black cat and he looked down at us and then he jumped out of the tree right down in front of the stroller. So you're telling a story, but it's just a little incident that happened, but it becomes a story because you're bringing it up again and you're adding a few details, and the place where this is the most beautiful, the most amazing, is when you have a child sleeping with you And that, sometimes when you have a child sleeping, I have 5 grandchildren, and there was a time when all 5 of them were sleeping with me, before they finally just got too big and it was impossible, but there was a period of time when there were a few nights at least when all 5 of them were there. But when one of them would wake up, when they're tiny and they wake up crying, instead of getting up, turning on the light, asking the baby what's wrong and all of that, you just go to the baby in the dark and you just start telling a story, and it doesn't even matter if you have any idea what you're going to say. It's just a matter of, once upon a time, it was dark and the sea was calm and the stars were shining, and all that, you need 2 sentences maybe, and the baby will be back to sleep again. There's something really, really powerful about that mode, that place to be in.
So when you used to read these stories, was this before bedtime, or was this everyone cuddles in the bed and then you read them the story and then they just knock off?
Which story are you talking about?
Any stories, when you used to do stories to your grandkids, was it something that you gathered in the room just before?
Okay, I was just talking to you now about just something I did if a child woke up crying in the night. That's what I was, yeah. Yeah,
you were, yeah.
Yeah, but then, yes, in terms of, telling them stories before they go to sleep, that's a really good time to do it.
Yeah, I was reading this text by a Christian author, and it's about the trivium, and he was talking about Christian studies, and he recommended that that all the children, the first book that they start reading when they start reading is actually the Bible, even though it's in Shakespeare language. It's very important that they start reading something like that before they start reading the easy books. What do you think about it? So in a way, we could talk about Islam in terms of the Quran. That obviously is the translations about Abdullah Yusuf Ali and so on. They were in that Shakespeare format. Would you suggest that we could follow the same methodology in terms of, when you start to read your child, read the translation or in English, or get them to start reading the Bible before, the Quran before anything else?
I think within reason, that can be really powerful. And I can remember a few times in our family, we didn't have an intention that our children would only hear the Quran, or they'd only hear religious stories, because I think that is a limitation which is not useful. And I can talk more about that later. But I can I can remember times reading it was from the Yusuf Ali translation, for instance, the story of Bilqis, and just reading it in that language. And they really love that. Yeah, but I think it's a problem when we see that we've sometimes, maybe it's just the way I grew up, I don't know, but I have a tendency to, or I would have thought that Islam was something that was like superimposed over the world, superimposed over the bad, because that's the impoverished understanding that the Christians have about the story of Adam alayhi salam. It doesn't occur to them that Allah Mighty Majestic intended from the very beginning that Adam alayhi salam was going to be on the earth, and he intended from the very beginning that he was going to be imperfect and he was going to be, make mistakes. And the first thing he taught him was how to approach Allah and how to be in the right relation with Allah, based on the fact that he is imperfect and he is a creature that makes mistakes. So what I'm trying to say is that Islam is not just superimposed over the bad. It's like Islam is in the dividing cells of the, it's in the very soil. It's in the very particles of everything. It's in the dividing of the cells and the spinning of the atoms and the spinning of the planets. All of it is Islam, actually, and it's all coming out of that. So therefore, this is why the companions weren't asked to banish the Jahiliyyah poetry. There wasn't a need to do that, because Islam was like underneath that, and so the Jahiliyyah poetry continued to be respected and consulted for whatever good it could bring into the world. So just to feel like your children will be closer to Allah if you don't ever tell them any fictional stories, or if you don't ever read to them anything that's not religious material. I think I'm not sure that's the best solution to things.
Thank you for that. I think that's very important that you made that point there, is to give people a better understanding of how to approach this. In terms of
I'm sorry, can I just go?
Sorry, yeah, go for it.
One more thing. On the other hand, we are living in a really unprecedented time where libraries of books are being written that have no distinction between good and evil, and they have no distinction between the physical reality and fantasy. There's no distinction made whatsoever. And these books are they're written and they're promoted by the same forces that promote medicines that make people sick and the whole other thing. It's all connected. It really and truly is all connected, unfortunately. And so we also have to recognize that, and we have to be really, really vigilant about what we're reading to our kids. There's some incredible garbage out there, as in the form of picture books, so.
I mean, I normally ask this question at the end, but is there anything you can recommend at the moment? So people who are watching now or listening, there may be a few texts that you can recommend to start with, possibly away from the Quran, possibly apart from your own books.
No, I can't.
No. So would you?
I'm not in a position to look at what's being produced right now. But right now, there are so many beautiful books being produced within the Islamic realm, which is really exciting. But still, they need to be, looked at.
Okay, inshallah. So obviously, there's a lot of budding authors out there who may join in today's session, looking for some sort of inspiration in terms of, the work that goes in behind making a book. Well, first of all, a title, a subject, which is probably the most important part, is how do you find that inspiration in terms of what to cover, what your subject would be, and then the work that goes on behind it. So if you could just tell us in terms of, the first part in terms of how do you find the inspiration, or where do you get the inspiration from in terms of how do you find the title of your next book?
Mm-hmm. Well, oftentimes you might not find the title until after you've written the book. So you look for something.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that you look for something that moves you from the inside, and this is from Allah. Something that inspires love in you, makes you want to learn more, makes you want, and just start following where it is. Don't be thinking about the book and the title, and then, all the publishers that are going to be fighting down your door, because that's not, it's important to just follow the vision and follow the inspiration and see where it takes you. And it might take you to a volume of poetry. Who knows? You don't know when you first start out where it's going to end. But the other piece that I've found really strong and important for me is just making dua about it, and just recognizing that if the best of creation was making dua to fix his sandal, what are we doing? And really and truly, what are we doing? He's creating us right now as we're, talking to each other. And so that's where everything has to start from. SubhanAllah. And turning to him for inspiration and for guidance is really key.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan for that. In terms of the process, I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is taking it step by step, but looking at the present rather than what's going to happen in the future, and take it one day at a time. And then there's another way is you look right to the end in terms of the whole process, and then you see, like you said, publishers, printing, and it all seems doom and gloom, and then it just deflates you, and then it puts you off the project. How do you approach the project yourself?
You just stay with the vision. You stay where the love is, and you stay with what you can develop. Yeah.
So in terms of your first book, which is Miraculous Happenings in the Year of the Elephant, we all know that the Year of the Elephant is when the Prophet ﷺ was born. How did you come about that title, and how was the whole process in terms of making that book?
Well,
How long did it take you?
that title came to me after I had written the story.
Oh, okay.
Completely after I had written the story. And then, I'm actually trying to remember how that all worked. I don't know. I entered it into a competition in the Islamic Foundation, which is now Cube, and it won an award from that, and then they made the picture book from it. But before that, it was just a story I was telling, and I was telling it because I was so moved by it and I wanted to share it. That's all. It wasn't, I didn't start out wanting to make a book. I started out wanting to share something that I loved. So
it's amazing that, because there's a lot of people that have said that they always start something at the home because they feel there's a need, and it ends up being a project which then like goes out globally.
Say it again.
There's a lot of people that, like you said, it's like some form of inspiration. Now, a lot of people, they say that they start something at home because they felt there was a need for it and they needed it in their own lives.
Yes.
And once they saw the potential of it, then they actually went out with it and it actually became a project in itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that how it works with you as
yes,
well?
Yes, it is definitely. Yeah.
So moving on to your next book, which is When Wings Expand. That's the title that I've heard from yourself. Can you tell us about that, the story about that, please?
That was something I wrote down because it's something that I lived. I actually had a friend, a close friend, who was dying, and I was caring for her children. And we actually found a monarch butterfly on a cabbage leaf in her garden, and we put it in a case and we watched it, and and then I actually they were living in Maine, which is quite a long way from where I was living, and I had to go home, and it wasn't for maybe 2 or 3 months later that she actually died. But then her children found a monarch butterfly on the morning that she died as well. And so that was something that happened to me, and I just wanted to write it. And so I wrote it, and then I sent it to, to the Islamic Foundation, and Fatma Doyen was the editor there. And she said, well, this would be very interesting as a journal, but I think you need to spend a lot more time developing the hard parts of her grieving. And at that point, I just took the whole thing and just put it in the bottom of my drawer, because I had been 15 when my own mother had died. And when I wasn't ready to really look at that, and so it was 2 years before I went back to that drawer and opened it up, and then bought a book on daughters whose mothers die, and did some reading. And, then it was only then that I could finish the book. And then as I was writing it, I remember feeling like, oh, this is too Islamic, or it's too Islamic. Don't say that, or don't say that. And then I finally decided, nope, I'm not listening to any of that. I'm going to write it the way I want it to be. And then it ended up winning that prize, which I just thought was so amazing.
Fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And in terms of the modern age where we're living now, a lot of people are on the road, in the cars, and so on, always out and about on their phones, on the iPods, what it used to be called iPods, now iPhones. Mm-hmm. So what's becoming very popular is Audible Books. Mm-hmm. Now I've got the Audible app myself, so I tend to download books from the Kindle and obviously listen to them on my commute when I go to work, when I come back, every time I'm in the car, rather than listen to music or Naats and sheets, what have you. I'll just stick on something to learn, to learn some knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I think and what I do like, and I must say this, is when I look for Audible books, I look for books that are read by the author themselves, because I feel that only the author can actually put that passion, the voice into the book, because they know the passage they're reading, they know why they wrote that passage. Well, if you have an external person, somebody else, they're just going through the motions and they can't give that passion or the meaning, the way you say that paragraph. like, for example, if it wasn't a video, you weren't looking at me moving my hands, you'll just be listening to me. The way I read out a passage, it could mean different things depending on the way I've read it. That's how I feel anyway.
Yeah.
And I think the way the author themselves reads that passage, only then can you actually feel what that passage means and why they wrote it. Do you feel that?
I think it's possible that there might be someone else in an author's circle who really does feel what he's feeling and has more capacity to express that. I think that's possible that someone else could feel that and capture those things. Yeah, I don't think I entirely agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because a lot of people are moving away from physical books because we feel like, there's not much time. When I was growing up, it felt like the day would never end. There was so much time to do things. Now I feel that there just isn't enough time in the day.
Yeah.
The only way I'm going to get something in is if I'm listening to it in the car, because I can't pick that physical book up and start reading it. Hence storytelling as well. Sometimes I find it difficult to sit down with my children and read a story because I just feel that there's just not enough time in the day. They need to make sure they get their quota of sleep every night as well. So I find it difficult. But hence a lot of people are moving towards Audible books. And would you say that that's why you started narrating them yourself, or did you feel there's a different need for Audible books?
Yeah, no. I from the very beginning, I wanted to do audio because I understood what listening means. Listening is really, it's the first thing we had. It's really critical. And the Prophet, may Allah bless him and give him peace, said, listen. And Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi started his book with the word listen, and so I wanted to be participating in people being able to listen and travel somewhere from what they're hearing. And this is what I'm most interested about in storytelling. This is why I don't really care about the video, because I'll just say that, for the first time in 3 years, I narrated the story of Musa alayhi salam just a few days ago here in Istanbul. And it was the first person afterwards said, I've been listening to that story all my life, but it's the first time I feel like I've actually traveled into it and experienced it and seen it. You see, and that's what the potential is. And so that's what I knew, and that's what I loved, and that's why I created The Bowing of the Stars, and it's why I created the Fall of the Tyrant and Take Heed and Sense of Paradise. All of it is because of that.
I think you were years ahead of the trend.
Well, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. But if I go back to the books that you wrote, just before we actually move on further, but in terms of purchasing it, because a lot of people who might be listening into or watching today might be thinking, oh, I'd like to see that book that you talked about. Where can I purchase that book from? Is it Amazon that people go to, or is it a website? Or
yeah, they're on Amazon, and they're also in the Cube. You can go to Cube, which is right there in Markfield, and you can buy them from them. Cube Publishing.
Yeah. Cube Publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that interests me is that is to get the feedback on things, on projects that you do. How do you actually receive much feedback in terms of from customers, you could say, in terms of the impact that your stories have had in their life?
I hear a lot more of that from the audio material, but I've had some amazing responses from When Wings Expand. I've had 2 8-year-old boys talk to me about what it meant for them, and I've had an 80-year-old man talk to me about what it meant for him. I've had a woman come to one of my performances in the UK with the book in her hand saying, will you please sign this? I bought it for my daughter, but then my own mother got ill, and I ended up, this was the book that got me through that. And so will you please sign it to me? So I've had so much response from that. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. So in terms of
And so the
your current,
distribution, I think the distribution I've never done anything to promote any of my books, unfortunately. So that's something I'm trying to learn how to make up for.
wow,
So yeah,
mashallah, I mean, I've seen that book in a lot of places. Alhamdulillah, I think you're doing well.
inshallah.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So in terms of the written books, do you have any current projects that you're working on that you might want to share with people, that so they can prepare for something, that in the future maybe that will be
No, there's
released?
nothing in terms of written book that I would want to say anything about. No.
Is audio the way forward, would you say? Audio
Yeah, I
book?
think so. I think that's my commitment. Yeah.
So obviously, I mentioned at the beginning that you narrate classical stories, to thousands of live listeners across the UK. So is this via your travels or is it online? How do you
No,
reach?
I've done several tours in the UK and the US. I've gone to Pakistan twice. I went to Australia and to New Zealand, and I've told to audiences in Jordan and in Turkey. So yeah, it's from that. I might come to the UK for 3 weeks and visit 12 towns and do 10 performances, let's say, or whatever. That's what I've done over the last few years. But because of COVID, it all stopped 3 years ago. But I'm really interested in doing that again.
Oh, we'd really love to have you here. We've got a big institute here in Nottingham as well, so we'd be thrilled to host you as well. So
Oh, inshallah. I'm doing that.
I'm looking forward to that. So don't forget us, please.
Okay. Inshallah.
No, inshallah. Because we've got a sister here in the UK. Her name is Jomana Moon, and mashallah,
Yeah.
she's into what you do as well, storytelling, and she's absolutely amazing. And she comes here and does these kind of programs, and the kids just absolutely adore her. They really do.
Mashallah. Yeah.
And mashallah, and that's why I wanted to reach out to yourself as well, because in a way, you've started this trend, and I think it's absolutely amazing that other people have been inspired and they're continuing that trend as well. And I think UK needs some more of this, and I think we need to give that message across, because in the times we are at the moment, there's a lot of confusion about it, and I think storytelling is one way to get back to the roots. And I think we need to revive this tradition, especially.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, if you can come sooner rather than later, maybe we can start this trend sooner as well.
Okay. All right.
Inshallah.
Pick up this conversation later. Yeah.
Inshallah. But what we wanted to give the listeners a treat today. We wanted them to listen to a sample of your recording. So if you don't mind, if you could play a couple of minutes possibly, so they can actually listen to your storytelling and what it's like.
Okay, good. This is from the work called Take Heed, which is what happens with the Bani Israel after they leave Egypt through the walls of water. So just to give you some background.
The sun slipped low behind the waters of the sea, darkening the distant mountains on the other side, shocking the undersides of the shifting clouds with shimmering gold, and then orange, and then the entire sky was dark violet, and an unexpected chill came into the air. The wide, long crowds of families finally stopped stretching ahead, and people settled themselves down, started building fires, and opening the water skins and bundles of what little bread they had been able to bring. The darkness deepened, and the brilliant stars filled the sky, a sight we can scarcely imagine, surrounded as we always are, with lit up streets and high rises and cities stealing away our nights. You can still travel in the Sinai and come to a place known since time out of mind as the Springs of Musa. It is a broad, flat oasis where springs, both salt and sweet, both hot and cold, flow from the ground. People for centuries have thought it to be the place where the Bani Israel might have rested after their ordeal in the sea. It's easy to imagine the relief they would have felt in the greenery of that place, After all those hours across the dusty, barren landscape, they would have rested there, perhaps bathing in the hot springs, sleeping in the hottest part of the day in the shade, listening to the chatter of birds and the thin trickle of running water, refilling their water skins from the fresh springs. How many days would it take for them to recover from the shock of those walls of water, or to finally feel that they had been released and were being led to their promised land?
MashaAllah. That was amazing. Jazakallah khair for sharing that with us. I think there's one experience. Of reading a book and being lost in the words. And I think there's another in actually listening to the story and being lost, especially with the the birds in the background. They actually you could feel. You just need to close your eyes when you listen to the story, and then you can smell it, you can feel it, you can hear it. It's amazing. It's nothing. It's something you cannot explain. You have to experience it.
Yeah, and the thing that we have to remember is that this is how the human being started out. Mm-hmm. Everything was in the listening. There weren't books, there weren't computers, there weren't anything. It was people had each other, and these these stories. This event is something that truly happened, and the people to whom it happened, just like when something extraordinary happens to you, you have to tell it. Did you ever notice that? You've got to tell it to somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is part of our humanity. And so this is what they did. They began telling it, to each other. They told it to their children as they grew up. They told it to their next generation, the next generation. And it wasn't until generations later, when they were taken as captives to Babylon, that it was committed to a surface. It was written down. But before that, it was something that was carried around inside of people. Same with all of the, just that's how knowledge was carried inside of people. So we have to, we have to see that it hasn't always been the way it is right now, and we might be missing something from how it was before. So,
do you think social media is a good tool for this, to share this storytelling?
I don't know, because there's so much other harm from social media. So I don't know. No, I think it's social media is what keeps us from being with each other. So, yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakumullah khair for that. In terms of your content, in terms of what you do, would you say Instagram is the best place to go to, or would you have a website that people can access to see your work and maybe download stuff or purchase your recordings?
Yeah, my things are available on my website right now, but I just found out today that there's this big snag on my website, and all my products are grayed out because I need a WordPress WooCommerce update or something or other. So I don't want to really put that out right now as an option for people. But if there's anybody who really wants to get in touch with me, my email is maryistanbul@gmail.com. So I would be happy to hear from anybody. And if anybody wants to acquire anything, I can send it to them, outside the website. And then also I'm looking into putting everything that I have on a membership site. So that's all in the works right now.
Okay, so if people want to follow your movements in terms of upcoming travels and so on,
well, they can look on Instagram for that. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I also wanted to share something else as well, because here on Radio Dawn, what we want to do is, obviously Ramadan is coming up. It's an exciting time for us. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the life to enter and experience another Ramadan, inshallah. I mean, what we want to do this year is to play audiobooks of people like yourself, and share this with our community, because we believe that, for example, like a radio station, it's for the youth because they're our future generations. And if we don't look after them, there'll be nobody to lead us forward. So what we want to do is share this and revive this practice of storytelling on our radio. We want to be at the forefront here in Nottingham. And we're proud to do that. And I just want you to talk about your new series that, inshallah, that we are going to be playing on Radio Dawn, inshallah. It's available. It's available to purchase. If people want to purchase it, inshallah, you can give those details. But if you could just talk about this series so people to just raise that interest, inshallah. We will play on Radio Dawn. People can listen to it, but anybody who's interested in getting it from yourself, if you could just tell us more about it, so then we can share that.
It's called A Month with the Best of Creation, and it's 30 15-minute episodes from the Sirah. Alhamdulillah, I'll just tell a little story about a family that used this series year before last. They had a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And they told their children that they were going to do something special every day before iftar, and that they wanted their children to be able to sit with them during this special thing that they were going to be doing. Because you see, the material is not written for toddlers. It's not written even for young children. But they sort of, encouraged them to get to the point where they could sit there with their parents while their parents were listening to this. And part of why they could do that is that each piece begins with a little tiny audio of music, of singing, of nasheed. And then on each one I say, I ask if people are sitting comfortably. And so there's a kind of ritual for the way it begins. And then at the end, again, is that interval of music. And it's not instruments, it's just vocal. And so they actually did that every single day in Ramadan. They didn't miss a single day. And occasionally, if something came up in the story that they could explain easily, they would stop the recording and just explain something in language that their kids could understand. And at the end of, when it was Eid, after the whole month had gone by, they invited me to their house, and I went there. And then the mother said, "Omer, tell her what you wanted to tell her." And he said, "No, I want to tell her in her own house." So I actually happened to live in the same building. So when I went home, he went up with me and he came into my house, and I said, "Okay, well, what was it you were going to say?" And he came up to me and he said, "Please make more recordings." And I just thought that was really amazing, because, I have this kind of soapbox about children. I feel like 100 years ago, we weren't surrounded with all kinds of materials that had been created for children. Children were at our sides, and they were listening to what we were listening to, and they were coming and going. And, this is how for centuries, how families learned. And I think it's really too bad to put a child on a steady diet of stuff that's been dumbed down for them. It's so they never have a chance to encounter something that they don't understand. That's horrible. We have to encounter things that we don't understand all our lives. The things that we don't understand are almost the most important things in our lives. And so what kind of a message are we giving a child, having them grow up thinking that they should never have anything in front of them that they don't understand? It's an impoverishment, so I really love this anecdote about the series that, it's made for families, and it's made to support a kind of togetherness that can really change your whole family's life. Alhamdulillah.
Fantastic. Alhamdulillah. I'm looking forward to sharing on Ready Dawn. 50-minute clips every
Inshallah.
day. It's not too long
Inshallah.
either, so it's
Yeah.
a nice little listen. And if people want to listen to a sample, it's on your Instagram, so they can go onto your Instagram and they can listen to a sample on there. And inshallah, if they're interested in purchasing the series, there's a link provided as well.
Yes, inshallah. And if they don't get it, it's because I haven't fixed my site. I really am asking for dua for anyone who's listening. I ask for dua with his technical pieces. The technical pieces are the ones that are.
So if anybody's listening can help, then inshallah, please do email.
Please. It's maryistanbul@gmail.com.
Alhamdulillah. Because what's the name on your Instagram? So if anyone wants to go on your Instagram, it's Maryam Sinclair Istanbul, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you for remembering. I was going to have to look it up.
So it's Maryam Sinclair Istanbul if you want to check out her Instagram page, and all her work's on there, inshallah, especially this new series that we're going to play. So if you want to listen to the sample, inshallah, please do check that out, inshallah. Sister Maryam,
I also want to say that on that I'm using alhamdulillah, I'm using I was going to hesitate to say this because I'm afraid I'm going to forget his name. There's a man in down near London, and he is also a psychiatrist, and he is the one who wrote the amazing song about I can't remember it. Anyway, he did a whole thing on the 99 on the names of Muhammad. The names of Muhammad. A sort of a a chanting, singing thing of that.
Psychiatrist.
Yes.
Is this something Talib Habib or something?
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, he gave me permission to use cuts from that.
Okay. Fantastic.
And
alhamdulillah. No, because Seeker's Guidance is something that was a free online Islamic courses that you could access from Canada. They've actually recently opened up here in the UK as well. Seeker's Guidance, and he was one of the guys who introduced it here, and he sang something on stage as well. So
mashallah, very nice.
No, alhamdulillah. This is I just want to take this time to say I really appreciate what you've done in terms of taking time out today for us. I've accessed your work in the past, and I think I'm really honored that you came on, because I think it's very important, looking at my own children, that we need to revive the storytelling for the sake of Allah. And I think what better example than yourself, mashallah. I'm not bigging you up or anything. It's really, honestly, from the heart. You've done some amazing work, and you've inspired so many in the community who continue that trend throughout the world. I'm sure of that. Inshallah. And we're looking forward to bringing you here, where maybe you can inspire our youth here in Nottingham to continue your trend here once you left us, kind of thing, from here before you go back. So thank you once again. I appreciate it. And we look forward to playing your series on our radio station. And hopefully it won't be the only series. Inshallah, every Ramadan you have something special for us.
Inshallah.
Every year, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you.
Mashallah. Please do keep us in your du'as as well, inshallah, and the community here in Nottingham.
Please also keep me in your du'as and my family.
Inshallah. And just for the listeners out there, if you could please like, subscribe, and share this session today, please share it widely, because it's very important for the sake of our future generations that mashallah, we've got Sister Maryam, who's an inspiration in the community in terms of the work that she does about storytelling. And if we don't start storytelling at the young age, then we may miss out once they've grown up. So it's very important.
Oh, no, it's never too late to start. Never too late.
It is never too late. But I think that foundation that you can give them at a young age.
Yes, inshallah. Yeah.
Because then it helps them in their studies and the focus definitely. And the attention and everything.
It's a key to language development. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day as well, you're learning lessons as well from the stories as well, which you can implement in your own life. So absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Sister Maryam. And I look forward to seeing you again, speaking to you again.
Inshallah. Yes.
After the next project. All right.
Inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.